We have CJ Orr here, who's going to be moderating this panel. Having served as a trusted client partner for over 10 years, CJ Orr has broad experience in fundraising and development, executive leadership, strategic planning, campaigns, and event management. He has launched funds, designed and led strategic initiatives, and driven fundraising for large galas and campaigns ranging from $10 million to $1 billion or more in revenue. He is an expert project and relationship manager. He executes developing strategies and tactics to drive effective fundraising plans that meet and exceed targets. So we also are really excited I'm really excited to welcome back to the stage Alex Kasavin, who is a senior product manager on Microsoft's Text for Social Impact team. The team empowers nonprofits and NGOs by equipping them with the tools to achieve their goals. And we are also excited to welcome back Zoe Darmé, who is a senior manager on the consumer trust team at Google, where she focuses on building responsibility and trust in products for Google Search, News, Maps, and Assistant. And we have the one and only Nathan Chappell here back. You may have seen him at our nonprofit marketing summit. He is a thought leader, public speaker, inventor, and award-winning author. And Nathan is one of the world's foremost experts on the intersection between artificial intelligence and philanthropy. He serves as the senior vice president at Donor Search AI and also co-founded Fundraising AI. And I'm just so excited to turn it over to this incredible panel.
Amazing. Thank you, Candace. I hope well, either way, Pat and Candace, thank you both for your time in that previous webinar, and learned some good things, and thank you. I just want to also thank Community Boost and Giving Block for putting this all together. You brought us all here today. You're able to organize this and brought us all the folks on this call. So thank you all for doing that. And again, thank you all to my panelists as well, taking some time to chat with us. So we appreciate that. And I'm really thankful for everybody that's joined us, 310 people and climbing. Thanks for joining our panel here called AI for Social Good. As Candace mentioned, my name is CJ Orr. I'm president and partner of Orr Group. She gave a little bit of background on me, but we've definitely been on jumping in on AI, on the forefront of AI. We've been training a lot of our clients that we work with on how to use AI. We've been doing AI implementations and really have been using it for social good. So thank you. Thanks for having me as the moderator, and I'm excited to jump in. We'll have some fun today, just at a high level. Our agenda is we're going to get started with some basic questions about utilizing AI. How would you go about doing it? What some of the challenges might be? And then we're going to get a little bit deeper. We'll discuss some specific use cases, some tools that have been effective. And then, of course, we'll do a little Q&A. So if you have a question, please drop it in the Q&A box. And we'll make sure to join to hop on it. So I'm thrilled to be joined by probably three of the most subject matter experts in the space. And I do not say that lightly. You have folks here from Donor Search, Microsoft, and Google. Really, these are the most prominent and engaged organizations in AI. So we truly are in for a treat. We have a great group here. I'm going to ask, I know Candace gave a quick intro, but I'm going to ask the panelists to do the same. If you wouldn't mind, just 1 minute, quickly introducing yourself and anything else you'd like to say. So Alex, maybe I can ask you to start.
Thanks, CJ, and thank you everybody for joining us. My name is Alex Kasavin. I'm a senior product manager on the Tech for Social Impact team at Microsoft. What our team does is builds first-party products for the sector, including a fundraising and engagement CRM, including a community training tool. We also provide discounts and licenses on the rest of the Microsoft portfolio. And I can think of no more important sector to equip with these tools than the nonprofit sector, the social impact sector, because you all are doing the world's most critical work, sometimes with the world's least amount of resources. I myself have been in the nonprofit world. I've worked in product development for a K-12 educational equity nonprofit in the United States, as well as for the New York State Education Department. So I've been on both sides of the table and looking forward to this conversation.
Zoe, you want to jump in next?
Great. Thanks so much, CJ. I'm Zoe Darmé. I'm a senior manager at Google, and I work on our knowledge and information product area. So these include products like search and the Gemini app, which I think we'll talk a lot about today, but also things like Translate or search trends. And so a whole range of products. One thing that I love to do when I start these talks is if folks could just drop in the chat kind of what sector do you work in? Is it education? Is it housing? Is it culture and arts? It would be great to know kind of the general breakdown of the group. And with that, I'll pass back to CJ. I think Nathan might be next.
Yes, and I'm going to popcorn it over right to Nathan. Nathan, not last but not least, for sure. Welcome, and love for you to introduce yourself.
No, it's great to see you, CJ, and great to be here, obviously, with all these amazing professionals. So, yeah, I think Candace did a pretty good introduction. I spent 20 years as a fundraiser after selling to tech companies. And I think at the end of the 20 years, I got really frustrated by the lack of innovation in our sector. So decided to innovate a couple algorithms that were really on the forefront on the predictive AI side. I've been working in AI for quite a while now, but focus more of my time on the responsible beneficial use of AI. So that's where I find, a lot of my joy and passion right now is on educating the sector globally on the need to move beyond AI ethics. It's great to be here.
Great. And Nathan, we'll get the opportunity here to educate the sector. So thanks for joining, and thanks for the intro. Okay, friends, let's jump in. So I saw in the poll that we have a lot of folks that are either learning about it, haven't implemented it, or starting at zero. So between those two groups, I think that was a majority of the folks. So this would be a good question. So if a nonprofit's starting at zero, they know a little bit about it, they've read it on the news, how could you miss it, right? It's on every single paper. They've tried a few basic tools, maybe that's Copilot, Gemini, or ChatGPT, but haven't gone further than that. So what are some pearls of wisdom on how to get started to leverage AI to optimize your fundraising? And Alex, I'd love to start with you if you want to kick us off.
Sure. Thank you. And despite the fact that I'm coming from a tech company, I'm actually going to start in a counterintuitive place, because I think the place to start is not with the technology. It's easy to dive in feet first and start playing with it and ask, well, what can this do? I think it's much more important first to ask, well, what do I want it to do, right? So reflecting on your role, what are the things that are the greatest stressors in your role? What are the things that most energize and bring you joy, right? Because we all came to this sector for a reason, because we wanted to drive a certain change in the world. Driving that change sometimes involves doing some things that maybe we don't love or maybe we're not so good at. So beginning from that point of self-reflection and saying, I hate writing this kind of update email, or I'm not so great at doing this kind of data analysis, whatever that may be for you. Starting there, and then taking those tools that CJ mentioned, be it the Copilot, the Gemini, what have you, and seeing, well, how can this help me do that thing? Rather than simply asking, what can this thing do? Because AI, broadly defined, can do a lot of things, right? As Nathan mentioned, it can do predictive work, it can do generative work, but I think it has to serve you first and foremost. The last thing I'll say is people are sometimes hesitant to jump in once they've done that self-reflection. And an hour of kicking the tires on these tools is worth 10 hours of reading about them. So I think the critical thing is just to get your hands dirty with them as well.
I love that advice. Thanks, Alex. Do some self-reflecting and figuring out how these tools can help you. And I love the kick the tires idea as well, right? It's just playing around, poking around, trying to see different ways that these tools can help you, and just spending an hour or two asking questions and pushing the limits on these different tools. So great advice. Zoe, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll do one more quick pulse check in the chat. What type of generative AI products are you using? Maybe folks can just put that in the chat, and I won't be offended if it's not Gemini. You can put in whatever you want. But while you're doing that, I'll just quickly say that, when you're using AI tools like Gemini, for example, one of the secrets to getting the results you want really has to do with how you are formulating your prompts. So in some sense, the better your prompts, the better outputs that you'll receive. And so we generally try to tell people who are just getting started, okay, role, goal, audience, style, and format. Give Gemini a role that it should play. Are you a grant writer? Are you a social media manager? Which type of role are you trying to get outputs for? Then your goal, clearly define what you want to achieve. Your audience, who will be reading this. The style, do you want it formal? Do you want it informal? Do you want it conversational? Do you want it light? And then format, do you want it in a bulleted list? Do you want a paragraph? Like how long or short? So for example, I might have a hard time remembering these tricks to a great prompt. So earlier today, I said, I opened up Gemini and I said, hey, I'm giving a presentation on how to write great prompts. What's a good mnemonic device to help, anybody remember RGASF? And Gemini offered rabbits gallop and sparrows fly. So that is my gift to you today to remember role, goal, audience, style, and format. Thanks, CJ.
That was beautiful. I did write down role, goal, audience, style, format, but I like the RGS ASF better. So thank you for that. And I actually find myself sometimes even writing in, hey, I want to write a grant letter. Can you write or provide me information I would need to know to write a good prompt? Like, what should I be asking you? And it usually starts that way and gives me the good information that I can put together to formally write a prompt. But good advice. Nathan, do you want to take us home?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of those are great advice. Again, starting from the predictive side back before AI was cool, I think things have shifted quite a bit, and affordable, the affordableness and accessibility of Gen AI is just, been such a strong catalyst for, broad adoption. I think a lot of people are figuring it out. When I think about it from my lens, I lead an AI team. We work with like lots of nonprofits, around 13,000 nonprofits in the country. It's pretty much every week I'll get a call with someone says, my boss says that we need to use AI. And then there's like a pause and it's like, what's AI? And so while like we're in a little bit of a echo chamber here, like everyone's on this call because we are either comfortable with it or at least wanting to learn. I think in general, there's still a lot of people. I mean, it was evidenced in that first survey of like how many people are just starting to kind of start on that path, that transformation, AI transformation. And I think at the end of the day, it does start with in this idea of understanding what are your gaps, what are the gaps, and what are the opportunities first. What are some of the things within your organization that are truly inefficient that you'd like to do better, and only then identify the type of AI that fits that void the best. And the others said this too. I mean, it's really around baby steps. It's just starting. It's starting and learning something new every day. It's attending webinars like this, and listening to podcasts or reading blogs. The AI transformation will pass you by if you're not part of it. I mean, the digital divide is growing pretty quickly. So start small. Don't try to boil the ocean, and just take it day at a time. I know it feels very overwhelming. It did for me, when I started, and I just became proudly the most annoying person on the planet that would ask anybody that knew anything about AI. I would just follow them around like a little puppy dog and just continue to ask a lot of times the same questions over and over again. And I think there's a lot of value in that. So just be that person in your organization that kind of builds that AI fluency.
And also goes to kind of Alex's point about doing some self-reflection first of what are the needs, what are the pain points. What I call them as the pain points, right? What are your pain points? What are those repetitive tasks that you do every day that could be automated or done more seamlessly with AI? And Nathan, you had a really good question in the Q&A chat, and I'm going to toss it right back to you because I know that we spoke about this in advance of the panel. Someone asked, can you explain what you mean by predictive? And so you, in prep for this panel, are saying there's a difference between predictive and generative AI. Can you explain that for the team, for the panelists?
Absolutely. It's such a foundational piece because I think right now with all of the AI hype, which is I actually think a lot of it is there's probably not enough hype, to be honest, because the type of generative AI that we're dealing with is so transformative for society and the future of society and work. But I think, while there's lots of different AI tools in the AI toolbox, I mean, there's, even forms of AR and VR and NFTs and NLPs. The two main types of AI that I think are important for people just to even have a foundational perspective on are predictive and generative. And, from a fundraising context, it's very simple. Predictive AI, not surprisingly, predicts things. So it really takes a lot of data and it makes sense out of that data. So it's very much an efficiency tool and a less is more tool. But on the other hand, you've got generative AI, and generative is about creating. And so it's about more. And so I think you have, really truly this, for the first time, we've been talking about the term precision philanthropy since 2017. I think in the first time in history, we actually could get to this idea of precision philanthropy in real life, which is around making really accurate predictions. So through predictive AI, it's about precision, and mixing that with generative AI, which is around personalization and creation. Put those two things together, and it's transformative for our sector. And I think I finally, we've been talking about precision philanthropy for so many years. It actually wasn't possible until now, and now it's possible to see, how you can activate through generative these incredible, like really strong predictions. So, yeah, hopefully that helps. I think it's it's good to impress your friends at dinner parties with to have a conversation about predictive and generative and how together they're going to transform society. I don't think anyone wants to just get hundreds of more emails every day or lots more stuff every day. We want to make more sense of the work that we already have, and I think these tools are really powerful for that.
Thanks, Nathan. And I'm definitely going to use that at the next dinner party. All right. Next question for the group. So while predictive and generative AI are great, and we're seeing all the great benefits of it, a lot of times it comes with challenges. So some nonprofits, they may encounter challenges when implementing AI. And I'd be curious from the group here, what challenges do you think nonprofits would face, and how would you recommend they overcome them? And so I'll start again with Alex, and we'll just go around.
So I think there are a handful of challenges, and I see some of them coming up in the Q&A already. Things like privacy, confidentiality, safeguards to ensure that information is protected. There, I think it's critical to understand who are you getting these tools from, what the terms of service are, because there's a strong distinction emerging between consumer tools, where very likely the data that you enter in may be open for use by the companies that build those tools, versus enterprise or business to business tools, where there are protections and confidentiality built in. For example, in Copilot, the Microsoft interface for large language models, it's very clearly labeled. You're in the enterprise tool, therefore your information is protected. Nothing that you enter in that tool will be used for the model or be made available to anybody else. And I think that's true for other vendors as well. So that's one dimension. I think when we talk about the predictive AI, like the work that Nathan mentioned, we have capabilities in that area, including a likelihood to donate model. However, in order to take advantage of those tools, you need enough data, and you need enough high quality data. Sometimes folks want to jump to getting the insights, generating the information, but they haven't done the work to prepare their data to make sure it's in the right shape, the right level of quality that a model like that expects. So I would say data quality is another one. And the last roadblock that I see people running into is frankly passivity, right? Sometimes nonprofits reach out and they say, well, how do I respond to this AI wave? And I would say it's not simply that organizations can and should respond. They can actively participate in shaping the wave, right? Wherever you may live, there's very likely a government body, a regulator who's thinking about how these tools can and should be used. You can contribute your voice as an individual, as an organization. There are convening groups, including Community Boost, including N10, including NetHope for others, where those conversations are happening. And organizations cannot simply participate in this technology, they can shape its future by raising their voice. So those are some of the stumbling blocks that I see, and I would love to hear from others as well.
Yeah. Zoe, do you want to take us away?
Yeah, I agree with Alex in terms of, there are consumer products and there are enterprise products. So we have Gemini, the app, which is gemini.google.com. You can also download it in Apple or Play Store. We also have Gemini and Workspace. So So, there are options available to folks. And I also put in the chat that even the consumer products, you should look at their privacy hubs or the privacy policies to kind of understand the settings that are available to you. And you can choose. When I use the Gemini chat all the time, but I also sometimes, when I'm working on something for work, for example, we'll definitely use some of the generative capabilities within Google Docs, for example. So very good point from Alex. I think the other challenge, I think that I haven't actually seen pop up in the chat, but which is important to talk about, is a lot of people have concerns about hallucinations. And so one of the ways that I think about using some of these tools is as a helpful collaborator. So first of all, I always, when I am using information that I've gotten as an output, I look at it. I use my own human judgment. AI systems don't have human judgment. I use my own human judgment. I use things from my past experience, having worked in nonprofits, having been a grant maker at nonprofits, to make sure that I'm tailoring the outputs to my audience even more. And so that's one helpful tip. I think another thing is, in Gemini itself, if you get an output and you click on the G, the Google G, we have a feature called double check. And that will show you where in the output we have found search results, for example, that seem to corroborate or correspond with something in that output. And we'll highlight in orange where you may want to do some more research. So that's just a really helpful tool, I think, to address kind of like ways that you can use it as a collaborator, but also, know that you have to double check things. And so I think that's a helpful way to get started in a responsible way.
Sorry. And Nathan, do you want to finalize?
Yeah, those are all great suggestions, and I would agree with all of them. So I won't add to any of those. I think our sector is a little different. I think our sector is a lot different, that we are essentially in the business of trust. And this is what really led me in 2018 to think of the concept of fundraising AI as kind of an advocacy organization for responsible, beneficial AI. And the reality is that, and I think the orientation must be for those in the nonprofit sector that responsible AI is everyone's responsibility. It's not Microsoft's or Google's responsibility on their own. Of course, they have frameworks for responsible AI. They have, lots of guides, how to do that. But at the end of the day, for-profit entities have financial incentives that will always, drive speed and scale, which they should, right? Because we want to get the best products that they can. The nonprofit sector doesn't have the same financial incentives. And I think with that said, there's an opportunity for the nonprofit sector to lead conversation that goes beyond responsible AI, that goes beyond ethical AI, that not only looks at things that are responsible, but also beneficial to humanity. And so, I get really passionate about this cause. I could eat cookie dough for lunch every day, but I know it's not good for me. So as humans, we inherently know the difference between things that are okay and things that are not beneficial. And I think that's exciting for our sector to struggle with some of those harder questions. I will say, absolutely know the privacy controls. And I hear that a lot. Hallucinations, privacy are two the big things of I'm not sure if I should use AI as potential barriers, but hallucinations are becoming less of a thing every day. Privacy and security are becoming more pronounced and upfront every day. So I think people have to come to AI with the assumption that AI can help them with pretty much anything, but to also remain, to be the human in the loop, which is not my phrase, but lots of people, Ethan Mollick and others talk about this a lot, is assume it can help you with anything, and then continue to be the human in the loop. And then the last part is just, understanding that, just because you're using, Microsoft or Google, whoever's AI, and they have responsible AI initiatives, think of it the same way as if I buy a car, I don't just assume the full responsibility of the safety of that car is based on, Volvo's track record or Subaru or whoever's, car it is, that me as a driver, in large part, no matter how safe the car is, if I drive it irresponsibly, it's not safe. So I have to think about my, application of driving that car in a safe car, but it's also the responsibility of the other drivers around me, and it's the responsibility of the government who posts speed limit signs and fix potholes. So my biggest concern is that people just defer their responsibility to others when sometimes those, and the others, that's a part of the equation, but it's not the full equation.
That's a great analogy. Really hit home. I think that's exactly right. Be responsible yourself. Responsible AI is everybody's responsibility, I think is what you said at the beginning there. I like that. Also, talk about the terms and service. I agree. I read anything I buy, I read the terms and service. I actually also plug the terms and service into the Copilot or Gemini or GPT to get their opinion on like what privacy do I have here? What could happen? Where are they using my data? Just to double check, right? I look at it myself, but I mean, these are very complex documents that it's good for sometimes a second opinion. Okay. I also hear hallucinations are less than 3% of the responses these days. So I know that they're getting down, and all your organizations are working on making them bring them down to 0%. So I think that's moving in the right direction. Okay, so next question is for nonprofits that are of the smaller size. So majority of nonprofits are below 5 million. Most are actually below 1 million. And I really think that AI could be very helpful for these types of organizations. So how can, or can you all discuss how AI can play a role for nonprofits with limited budgets? And Alex, I'll start with you again and just go around the horn.
Sure. Yeah, so I can offer at least one example that we can discuss publicly. We have a customer called Agape Source, which welcomes international students, foreign workers, and refugees to Florida. They have a staff of 3 people, and they use Microsoft Copilot to help them with messaging to the individuals they're welcoming, with outreach and communications and drafting marketing, with answering questions that come up. So it's something that we're working to make accessible to organizations of any size, right? If you're more than 3 people, you can benefit from it. Probably if you're 1 person, you could benefit from it. And I think it's critical to look at whichever technology vendor partner you're looking at. For example, we have a portfolio that can grow with you, right? So you can start with copilot.microsoft.com, interact with that, use it to your benefit. Then there are tools that have Copilot baked in. So for example, if you use the Modern Work portfolio, your Outlook, your Word, your Excel, etc., there's Copilot baked in there that you can benefit from if you're a heavy user of those tools. Then as your organization grows, hopefully, with support of those tools, we have a customer relationship management or constituent relationship management system that integrates Copilot and helps you take advantage of generating broader marketing communications with segment generation to understand, well, who are my donors who did this in the past year? We have a donor search integration that can pull in some of those scores and additional prospecting and other information that Nathan's team puts together. So I think you can start small with the tools that are broadly available on the web. And then hopefully that helps your organization fundraise and grow, and the tools will catch up with you as your organization grows.
Excellent. So do you want to go next?
Yeah. So when I was working in intergovernmental organizations and nonprofits, we did not have the resources that I have now working in a tech company. But I think fundamentally, one thing that's the same, no matter what industry you're in or what field you're in, is we're always short on is time. And so there are just those tasks that we know that we procrastinate on. I might be saying, oh my gosh, I have to write those talking points. Or you might be saying, oh, my donor just said I need a revised theory of change. And you just need a little bit of a kickstart to get things started. That's kind of when I turn to generative AI products and services to just like help me get over that hump of originally starting something that I'm procrastinating on or that I know will take a long time, just to give me a good base. And then my time is freed up to do other things. But another thing that I wanted to mention, because I saw everybody put in the chat, one person said, I've not used any generative AI, or other people said, oh, I've used ChatGPT. How many of you have used machine translation? Just go ahead and put that in the chat if you've used machine translation. If you need to use this to work with constituents, or you need to work with populations that have English as a second language, or anything like that. Trudy, a good example would be Google Translate, for example. Great. So if you have used that, fun fact, you may not know that you actually are using large language models, because many machine translation services run on large language models. So there are ways that some of this technology might be helping you already. And I think for whether that's in your personal life for travel, I use that a lot, or whether it is in working with constituencies. When I used to focus on peace and security in West Africa, there were many languages I just couldn't speak, Wolof and all of the other language, and French and all of these things too. And so it's been really helpful for me in my professional life as well. So that's one great way when you don't always have the advantage of human translators and simultaneous interpretation.
You, Nathan?
Yeah, and I always love the trick question, like how many of you, are using AI or have trained AI, and less people raise their hand or whatever. But then, anyone who's used Netflix or Waze or Google Maps or any of those things have been using AI for a long time, and so we're very used to receiving the results from AI and kind of that ubiquitous kind of perspective. It's just that next leap forward. The part that I get excited about, and I remember speaking about AI to a group of nonprofit professionals. It's like 2017, and it was all kind of like futuristic. It's like, this is going to be coming. It's like right now Google's already doing it, and others are doing it, but it's going to be coming. And someone would ask the question like, well, when do we get access? Like, we're a small nonprofit. When do we get access? And it literally was like, you just, like, to be honest, like, you've got to wait, because the technology and affordability of the technology just hasn't caught up, and now it is. I mean, it's fully accessible and affordable to both. I mean, from a Copilot and a Gemini perspective, like, costs you nothing to just jump on. And it does come down to time. If there's areas that you can enhance your work, you could do it, and this is like the results every single time. Any control group that does these studies, whether it's a university or Gartner, is that you could produce your work better, you could produce it faster, and you could produce your work with less burnout. Those are three things: better, faster, less burnout, that every nonprofit professional I've ever met in my life could be helped by those three things. And I think that's amazing. I will say that not all AI is equal. Alex was talking about data earlier, and obviously there's a phrase in AI that essentially that big data beats clever algorithms, but better data beats big data. So you don't need tons of it, but you do need to have data with examples of things. So if we were talking about and I'm going into predictive AI, organizations need to stop treating data as a luxury or as a nice thing to have. That whether you are now or you will be in the future, making predictions based off the data that you have. So data needs to become part of your strategy and how you collect data in a consistent way. You'll benefit tremendously from that. So I would just say, if I think about AI, from enterprise level, large nonprofits, of course, they've got lots of data. They're able to do predictive AI and generative AI. The middle-sized nonprofits, they can still use both those things, but there's a trade-off in accuracy, all the way down to the smallest nonprofits that maybe aren't doing any predictive at all. I mean, we offer lots of large national algorithms to even small nonprofits through Microsoft. But at the very, very least, if you're using Netflix, you should just jump in and start, pick a tool and then start figuring out how to do your work better, faster. And frankly, you'll find out on your own that you're going to be less burned out based on doing that.
Thanks, Nathan. Better, faster, less burnout. Good to take away. And Alex, I'll share that around marketing communications, there's a lot of time-saving opportunities there. I'm just thinking about building a case statement. Traditionally, you'd have to hire a writer, you'd have to hire a designer, and then you have to hire a photographer to take photos, right? So now you can go with one of your large language models to build the actual writing. You can use Canva to design it. Then you use Adobe Firefly to generate some images. And you can even use those large language models to translate it as well. So you can build a case statement almost for virtually free, and in probably 1/50th of the time. So that might be a good example of the cost savings, the doing it better, faster, and with less burnout. So thank you all for that. So do you all have any case studies of nonprofits that utilized AI to enhance productivity? Not necessarily fundraising, but just generally productivity. Is there anything that you all can share with us that would be good for the audience to learn? Alice, we'll start from the top again.
Sure. I've got a few. And I actually want to start with one that's on the border of fundraising and then move into the program space, because Kevin asked in the chat, well, how can AI help in terms of addressing missions? So I think if you define fundraising really broadly, there are lots of ways that AI can enter the picture. For example, we've worked with Shop Goodwill, which has an e-commerce portal, and historically it would take them a significant amount of time to sort items, then take pictures of them, figure out what they were, and type up a description of those items. Now you can take a photo of the item, take photos of the labels, and generative AI will create a draft listing for you that you can review and publish. So if you happen to have any kind of commercial dimension to your fundraising, that's one way it could help. Now, on the programmatic side, I saw a comment from Joseph that he's used machine translation in corporate communications, in biblical interpretations. We've also worked with cultural institutions to scan documents, to do optical character recognition, to build custom models of historical handwriting, all of which is AI, and then generating summaries of those documents. We've worked with cultural institutions that had large collections of photographs, where they needed to more accurately identify what was in those photographs and make that metadata indexable and searchable. On the direct service side, I have a couple of examples to share, one of which is a refugee support organization that has built a predictive model, so along the lines of what Nathan's describing, not something that generates text or images, but something that gives you an answer based on a possible set of answers to determine where refugees might thrive. So taking years of historical data about where refugees have been placed, maybe their specific medical needs, their language requirements, their family size, and their job outcomes, right? Where did they ultimately find fruitful, meaningful employment? And using that to predict for incoming refugees, well, where might this organization best place them? So, I love that example, because that to me is using some of those predictive AI capabilities to make a real difference in the lives of people who are coming to the United States.
Thanks for that. Zoe or Nathan?
Sure. So, I'll drop in the chat like a link to a bunch of case studies about how nonprofits have been using various Google tools and not just Gemini, not just generative AI. I think, generally speaking, the most natural kind of example is, using generative AI to help you think through, okay, how do I craft this donor email? Or how do I even do a follow-up email after a big event and say thank you? And so things like that. But I think beyond that, I like Alex's examples that are beyond just fundraising as well. It's really, the possibilities are limitless. We've got one set of tools called Google Pinpoint, which was originally designed for journalists. It's also available to nonprofits. It helps you analyze a large corpus of documents. It has transcription. It has the ability to find, let's say, I'm looking for RCMP, the Canadian Mounted Police. It will look in documents and find any references to Royal Canadian Mounted Police, to RCMP, to the version of that in French. It will find it in handwriting in documents using optical character recognition, which Alex also mentioned. There's just a lot that can be done with the technology that we have. And we also have been using our AI tools also to predict things like wildfires or flood forecasting. We've also been using this technology to develop maps of where there are possible methane leaks, where there is tree canopy coverage. And so cities are even using some of this, for example, to figure out where to invest in planting additional trees for their cities and things like that. So the possibilities really are limitless. But they're not just the generative AI capabilities. A lot of this is plain old regular AI, like Nathan's been mentioning throughout today's talk.
Nathan,
the uncool part of AI, I guess, right? I'll just riff off. I mean, I love all those examples. I mean, when we see like really incredible innovative uses of AI, it really comes in places of great need. So whether it's in climate or tracking migratory patterns of different species, or refugees and helping, or knowing who to serve in disaster relief efforts. I mean, those are all insanely impressive things that are like truly allowing those organizations to deliver services at scale in a way either they couldn't before or they couldn't affordably. And so I think in generally kind of that's the big promise. But all the way down, and I'll just give like the most micro example, like to organizations. I mean, I led nonprofits for 20 years. I never met an individual who woke up any morning and said, today's the day that I get to write the descriptions for our auction baskets for our gala this weekend. Like, in all my life, no one ever said that. No one would, because it's like the worst job that people, the short straw of the person who has to write the auction descriptions. But to that same exact, principle, that was shared earlier, it's that take a picture of the items, throw it into whatever and just say, this is an auction basket for our gala. Can you write a description? I mean, it's just so like, again, like the big scale macro things, like we are so fortunate to have insight on like global trends and be able to do that, very, accurately and at scale. But all the way down, it goes back to that idea I shared earlier. It's like, assume that AI can help you with pretty much anything. And then, find that thing that's that pain point, like writing auction descriptions for a gala. It's like, that's something you don't enjoy doing. I think when we see the switch for most people is it's not about, figuring out which model to use and which one you like better. It's about a mindset shift of just waking up and assuming like, I don't want to do this the old way. Like, I wonder if there's a different way, and then start experimenting with it. When you change that mindset, it's pretty powerful. So it's like for us to sit on this call, it's like almost so obvious. And I know there's still a lot of people who are like, it's not that obvious, but I promise it will become that way, because, there's like a 10-hour rule, is that when you immerse yourself in this for around 10 hours, you'll start to that mind shift, will reset like it was back in the day when you naturally just go to the store to buy, something, then you get to the store and realize they didn't have it. And then you'd be like, oh, why didn't I just order that on Amazon? If people remember that. And now your first instinct is like, if Amazon could have it here in 3 hours, why would I go to Home Depot? That mindset shift will change, usually I think for most people around 10 hours. So my encouragement is just do it. We'll steal from Nike.
Conclusion there, Nathan. No, very, very wise, and really great feedback. Thank you for that. And thank you for all dropping in the examples in the chat. Really helpful. So I know we have about 15 minutes, and I want to leave some time for Q&A. So I'm going to combine my last couple of questions. And also, I saw someone did ask this question in the Q&A, so it should solve one of those questions. There are tons of tools around AI. We've mentioned probably 10 of them in this call right now. What do you all use? What do you find to be the most useful? What do you find to have the best ROI? Like, what is free that you would use all the time? Please feel free to talk about your own tools from Microsoft and Donor Search and Google. All is good. But just want to hear from you all what you recommend and that people can walk away from this meeting, go online, check it out, and use tomorrow. What do you all think? Alex, I'm going to go to you first, as always.
Sure. No, happy to get started. I mean, I would absolutely encourage folks to check out Copilot, right? Given that's what we at Microsoft produce. We're quite proud of it at copilot.microsoft.com. But I also, myself personally, love to kick the tires on every other tool that exists, right? I use Gemini, I use ChatGPT, I use other providers' tools. And it helps me learn about the sector, and it helps me learn what our tools do well, what other tools do well. I think if I were sitting in the shoes of the folks on this call, I wouldn't just listen to those of us on this call who have a vested interest in certain products. I would find trusted folks out in the community. So you mentioned, I forget, somebody mentioned Ethan Malik. He's a fantastic investigator of these tools. He teaches at the University of Pennsylvania. He constantly posts about what he's able to do with them. Recently wrote a great book called Co-Intelligence that I would encourage checking out. It's very accessible, and it's focused not on the nuts and bolts of how these things work, but on what these things can do for you. Beth Cantor is also a wonderful resource. She wrote The Smart Nonprofit with Allison Fine some years ago, and she's been providing a lot of really useful content to the nonprofit sector about how AI capabilities can serve it. And I mentioned earlier, NetHope, N10, Community Boost, the nonprofit club, the Community Boost hosts. It's critical to find peers and ask them, well, what have you used? How has it worked for you? I myself use Copilot for a few things. I use it to help me generate things like SQL queries and other kinds of forms of analysis. I use it to ask technical questions that I would otherwise be bothering my engineering colleagues about and distracting them from the work that they need to be doing in terms of coding. I also used, I built myself a custom GPT when I was traveling to Italy, sort of similar to what Zoe described, to help my family and me get around and get phonetic pronunciations for Italian words. So think about it, if you're hesitant to try these tools in your professional life because of your organization still investigating them, try them in your personal life, right? See, what can I cook using X, Y, and Z in my pantry? How can I prepare for this kind of trip? And then as your organization wraps its arms around all these capabilities, you'll already be prepped because you'll know how to build effective prompts, as Zoe's earlier point, and you'll know what sort of the capabilities of these tools are, and you will have developed those 10 hours that Nathan mentioned.
Thanks, Alex. Zoe, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. So for fear of sounding like a walking advertisement for Google, which sometimes my friends say that I do, which is an occupational hazard, I'll say. We've talked about Gemini, we've talked about Copilot, we've talked about ChatGPT, we've talked about all of these things. I mean, if you only remember one thing, it's that AI is beyond just the generative AI capabilities. You are using AI every day in many ways. If you have a robot vacuum, you are using AI. If you use Google search, you are using AI. If you use maps, you are using AI. And so I think when you remember that, it helps take away a little bit of the, oh my gosh, we are a small org and we're not that technologically advanced. You don't have to know the ins and outs of what LLMs are, what it means that they're probabilistic and not deterministic. You don't have to know the difference between a large language model and an information retrieval system. Like, these are all things that you don't have to worry about. There are products that can make it really easy for you to take advantage of all of this without having a technical background, which, by the way, I don't have a technical background. I am an English PhD dropout. So what I will say, I will give one plug for my favorite product that a lot of people don't think to use, which is Google Lens. And so I liked Nathan's example because it was multimodal. You can take a picture of a plant and say, hey, this plant, what are the watering recommendations? Or I don't know the name of this piece on my bicycle. What is it and how do I fix it? That kind of thing. I really like the multimodal examples. The other thing, Lens has translation. It has homework help in it. And I just think it's really fun. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Zoe. Nathan, you want to go next?
Yeah, I think probably like the others, I use them all. And you develop preferences over time based on the type of work you do. I mean, there's things that, I think capture voice better. Like, I think Claude is my go-to for understanding my voice. It's read my book and it really, kind of helps in that regard. But I use them all. And Alex said this too. It's like, find people that are less biased in it and just kind of talk to them about, like, well, if I'm trying to do this one thing, which is the best tool for that? Because they all excel differently in different things. So with that said, actually, of course, I should give the obligatory plug to Donor Search. I mean, DonorSearch.net. We really pride ourselves on building truly scalable, transparent, meaning completely open AI machine learning, and making predictions for nonprofits on who's going to give and give again. So on the predictive AI side, I could proudly say like we are really far ahead. We've been doing this longer, and being a data provider, we're super strong on that. On the rest of it though, it's like the Wild West, and honestly, it changes like every time you blink. Like, I mean, I mean, Mustafa Solomon now is at Microsoft as of like a couple weeks ago, and it's like the who's a Google DeepMind person, and so like it's just so fluid, and everyone's investing in everyone's companies, so they're like frenemies and all this stuff too. So like it means that like you can, if you're kind of work your way around it, you can really leverage the tools that really support like the work that you like to do or the things that you're interested in. And that's why we created the Fundraising.ai podcast on Apple. It's really quickly, or on Apple and Spotify and YouTube. We do it. We do a weekly, podcast now on the lens of like what's happened this week in the world of AI. And honestly, like every week, we can't even get through the list because there's like so many big things that are happening. And unless you're going to spend 15 hours a week like me reading and watching all these different moves, going to a 30-minute podcast is like the way to go. And just, and we're not the only one, obviously. There's like a gazillion podcasts on AI right now. Find one that you like, and start absorbing kind of the information, and you'll definitely make your path, right? I think it starts again with that mind shift switch of just like, hey, this is not going away. The digital genie is out of the bottle. Unless I'm going to go, buy a farm somewhere and try to get off the grid, like this is a part of your everyday life. You might as well, and you probably should be on the side of the digital divide that is, from a career perspective, from an organization perspective, that means there's winners and losers. Be on the winner side, be the person with AI fluency, and that, doesn't take a lot. It just takes that mind shift switch a little bit and a kind of natural inquisitiveness that you just wake up every day and want to learn something new.
Thanks, Nathan. One of the questions in the Q&A was what podcast you listen to. So I hope everyone heard that Fundraising.ai podcast. Yeah. And then I also listen to the AI Breakdown. That's a daily podcast if you really want to get into it. And there's, as Nathan mentioned, hundreds and hundreds of more, but those are just two recommendations. And also we've done the same thing. Yeah, we've researched over 90 different tools. And so we use a lot of them and use them all. There's some good for some things, good for things, and some for others. But actually, the number one tool outside the large language models that's used globally is actually Grammarly. And I saw someone in the chat put that up there. Grammarly is great, and it really helps just make sure everything is written correctly. And obviously, the title or the name of the company gives it away, but we use that a lot as well. So thank you, panelists, for chatting with us about this. And the next question I'm going to have is coming from the Q&A. The Q&A, there's probably 5 or so different questions here around privacy, around copyright, around data, safeguards around these tools, make sure that it's not taken anywhere else. There's patent information, IP, citation issues. Here, Princey, I'm going to put one up here. Big topic, and maybe I just want to conclude. Is anyone comfortable among this group? I know we're not lawyers, and so we're not trying to give legal advice. Anyone comfortable taking a stab at the kind of question here about patented materials, intellectual property, and copyright?
I can do a first pass from the Microsoft perspective. So with the caveat, I'm also not a lawyer, but Microsoft has issued a copyright protection pledge where if folks are using our tools within the guidelines set out for those tools and they run into some sort of copyright issues, that Microsoft will back them. So I think that's something we're quite proud of, because we want people to be able to use these tools comfortably without that kind of fear. And to kind of our earlier discussion, Zoe and I both emphasized understanding the terms of use. And CJ, you gave some good advice on how to understand those terms of use. If you're worried about how a tool may or may not use your data, you have to dig into that. And I think you'll develop that confidence that way, right? When we provide tools like this, we don't make money off of your data. We want you to use these tools safely, comfortably, and in a way that aligns with your mission and your own internal governance structure. So read the terms, build that confidence, review them with your legal teams, develop a governance group within the organization to set the policies and rules that you want people to follow. And I think you'll be safe and on the right track.
Thank you for that. Anyone else want to opine?
Yeah, I think Alex covered the copyright one pretty well. Maybe I can help with some of the privacy ones if that's a good use of time. We kind of covered this already, and Alex also mentioned it in familiarizing yourself with the terms of service. Alex also mentioned something that I think is helpful from our perspective as well. Like, know when to use a consumer product and when to use an enterprise product, because the terms of service for those two types of products might be different. And so while you do have disclosures and controls about how your data is being used, et cetera, in the consumer tools, you have a separate set of disclosures and controls in terms of an enterprise or workspace environment. And so when my rule of thumb is, if I'm doing something for work that I really know I need to remain private, I will use workspace. And that's kind of how I approach it. And that might be an easy way for you to heuristically think about it. But, you know, if you are lucky enough to have a general counsel at your organization, not everybody has those resources, you know, do confer with them, because there are really experts at understanding, you know, privacy policies and guardrails, especially for your individual organization. So those would be my recommendations.
And I'll just add one additional resource, you know, which was built from nonprofits for nonprofits, which is the framework for responsible AI on fundraising.ai's website. I know, CJ, you're a part of that on the advisory council. That was developed by nonprofits all over the world as the first framework specifically for the fundraising sector. That can serve as a basis for, like, if I was going to use AI, hire AI, build AI, use a framework like that as a questionnaire. Like, is this AI explainable? Is it transparent? And, you know, kind of what are mitigate those adverse impacts of that? And so, I think you're not alone. And it's surprising how few nonprofits actually, they're using AI, but how few actually have any sort of framework. So adopt a framework and then use that as kind of directional guidance for the things that you're going to do if you don't have counsel and you don't have a very clear statement.
With that, we'll wrap. I thank you so much to all of our panelists. Thank you to those who listened in. We had over 300 people tune in. So thank you all for that. And thank you again to the Giving Block and everyone else that was Community Boost and everyone else that was involved in producing the event and putting this all together. It's really a team effort, and can't thank you all enough. So just for the audience, I love talking about this stuff. My email is cj.org@orggroup.com. Always happy to just brainstorm and talk with folks. We're really just power users of all this great technology and tools that this group has put together. And so I just, again, thank you, the panelists, for answering all these great questions. And thank you for everyone for listening in. From here, I believe we have a break, but I'll let Candace jump on and take it from here. Thanks, everybody.